If you want to be a good leader, you have to think about your wellness, right? If we think about the leaders that we admire or that we would follow into the fire, are they people who are stressed and anxious and not sleeping well? Typically not. They've got their, 2 feet on the ground and they feel secure and like safe when you follow them. So I think part of business school is really learning that concept for yourself and carrying it into your leadership style. And it can almost be the first thing to go when people start getting stressed, but that's why I feel like my role is so important is how do you help create an environment where people understand and can play with that and learn that for themselves so that they can be the leaders that they want to be. So
I definitely could have used that in my pre-Ross career.
Couldn't we have all?
Welcome back to Business Beyond Usual. My name is Mark O'Connell, and we're recording live from the Ross School of Business once again. I'll be one of your executive producers this year, alongside Aishwarya Dhume and Vashishta. With the school year just getting started, we thought it would be appropriate to kick off with an episode to discuss the backstory and the future direction for the MBA Council this year. So we brought in a few of the vice presidents to tell you all about the exciting new happenings at Ross. Before we get started, we want to encourage you to get in touch. We always love engaging with our listeners, and we'd love to hear from you. Send us a message at bbupodcast@umich.edu. Again, bbupodcast@umich.edu. Or follow us on Instagram at Ross_BBU. Again, that's Ross_BBU. And feel free to DM us there as well. Ask us questions, suggest episode topics, or just say hello. I'd like to start the episode off with some introductions for everybody. I'd like to hear your name, your background pre-Ross, what you did for the summer, and then any other extracurricular involvement that you have going on besides the council. And Vraj, we can start with you.
Yeah, definitely. My name's Vraj Mehta. I am the VP of International Student Experience here at Ross. My background before Ross was in underground mining. I did that for 3 years. I was involved in the asset management, and I enjoyed that a lot, but came here at Ross to sort of change my background and also dive a little deeper into the business aspects. My summer internship was at Washington Gas through Tauber School of Global Operations in Washington, D.C. It was involving sustainability project with them in the corporate division. My extracurricular involvement here at Ross involves being the co-president of the Energy Club and being involved in a couple of fun clubs such as the Gourmet Club and the Wii Games Club.
We do love Gourmet Club.
I know. I'll pass it on to Alex next.
Thanks. My name is Alexandra Maxwell, or Alex for short. Prior to Ross, I actually worked in multinational dairy manufacturing in the finance area. So I learned how to account for milk, which is always a fascinating exercise. This past summer, I was also in the Tauber Institute for Global Operations. And so I worked for Nestle Purina. We were tasked with building, from scratch an application that they're going to use in their inventory management processes. And in addition to being the VP of Wellness for the MBA Council, I'm also the Wellness Chair for my section, as well as the co-VP of Operations for the Social Venture Fund, one of the student-led funds on campus. And I also am the president of the Tauber Student Advisory Board. And in addition to that, I like to just walk my dogs and do yoga.
Keep yourself busy.
I do.
Yeah, so I'm Drew Maloney. Prior to Ross, I was living in Seattle working for Microsoft, where I was doing corporate finance. And prior to that, I was actually living in Dallas, Texas, where I was working for Frito-Lay doing corporate finance. And, this past summer, I was working at Jefferies doing investment banking in New York. I'm actually from New York, so it was nice to be back there for the summer. At Ross, so I'm the VP of DEI. But also I participate as the VP of recruitment for the ZLCF fund. It's the Zell Lurie Commercialization Fund, where we invest in early stage startups. I also am part of MBSA, so my role there is being the head of Skeeps, which is really important.
Paramount experience.
Exactly. And then in addition to that, I'm the co-chair for the ALE conference. I'm a part of the BBSA board, which is our Black Business Student Association.
Hi, everyone. My name's Diya. I am the MBA Council president, which still feels really weird to say because I've been saying incoming for about 6 months now. So prior to Ross, I was working in advertising and marketing, mostly on the project management side. So I was working on all things TV ads, Google display ads, podcast ads, worked on some of those, and just really loved what I was doing. Here at Ross, I have been super involved in MBW, which is our Michigan Businesswomen organization. I am also part of Wolverine Wine Club, the Yoga and Pilates Club, and I'm also a student ambassador. So if you've, ever come across the Ross website, we have all our profiles there. We're always happy to chat with any prospective students. This past summer, I was working at Deloitte Consulting over in Los Angeles, specifically in the human capital practice. And I'm super, super excited to be going back there for my full-time job. And I think that was everything.
Yeah.
I'll kick it back over to Mark. Yeah.
Honored guest joining us today. So kind of looking forward in this episode, I would love to hear one of the things that you guys loved the most about your MBA 1 year, maybe like one or two really great stories that you have, and then one or two things that you're really looking forward to this year as MBA 2s. And Diya, we can start with you.
Cool. Awesome. It's really hard to pick one or two things, to be honest, because I think that our reflection on the past year is an amalgamation of all the stuff that's happened over the year. I think one of the things that's really stuck with me, especially as I've been connecting with the new MBA 1 class, is that everyone chose to come to Ross because it was different from what they knew before, right? And that was one of the main reasons I wanted to come here. I went to USC for undergrad. I really am a California girl at heart, but I really wanted to push my edges and my boundaries as far as I could. And I think every single experience I've had has culminated in that. I feel like I went back home this summer a completely different person with so much different perspective than I had. If I had to pinpoint one memory that really took me out of my comfort zone, it was definitely participating in our OFB, which is Out for Business Community here at Ross. And they put on an event every year called MBGay, which is a student-run drag show. And I have never participated in something like that before, but I danced to a Taylor Swift song dressed in drag with my husband. And I can clearly say that's literally not anything I ever thought I would do. And I was so far out of my comfort zone, but we got it done. So I'd love to hear about all of your experiences. I think you'd have way better stories than I did.
Good one, though.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know if mine's better than that one, but, obviously during the fall, a lot of us go through recruiting and that can be incredibly stressful. And, I was able to get my internship right before winter break. So I really enjoyed my winter break going home. But I like to say, I guess it was New Year's Eve. I flew out to Los Angeles from New York on a 6 a.m. flight. Did New Year's Eve with 60, 70 Ross people in LA, which was really
ridiculous.
Cool. And then the next morning, we had a Ross tailgate for the Rose Bowl, which was, an incredible experience. And then it was one of the best games, not only that we've seen, but just in college football history. It was just an incredible game. And then the next day I flew to Vancouver and we drove up to Whistler and I joined another 50 Ross people in Whistler, Canada for a week where we skied on one of the best mountains in North America. And that was just a great time, fellowshipping together with people, not in a school environment. It's one thing when we're here in Ann Arbor, but it's another thing, to be in New York with some people, be in LA with some people, be in Canada. And that's so much of the MBA experience as well. So that was my favorite part.
That's epic. That sounds like an epic 5 days. I was only there for half of it and it was already epic.
There was there wasn't many weeks where I was there wasn't many weeks better than that one.
Yeah, it's hard to follow those two stories. I think I came to business school because I knew I wanted new community, right? To meet people who would challenge me, make me think about things I couldn't even possibly fathom in my little bubble in the world. And then I wanted to have more of an academic introduction to new concepts, new ideas. And so it's hard to follow up these community-driven stories, but I'll just share.
Hey, whatever fills your bucket.
So I have both, right? So, just a very, a glimpse into into what is just so incredible about the community and like these small moments is one of my top 10 moments from my first year was, we have a tailgate for the football games called the bus. And there's like the pre-bus before the football game, and then there's the post-bus. And the post-bus for the Ohio State game,
oh my God,
there was a full moon. It was muddy. Everyone was having a blast. And I just remember moshing with one of my section mates and his brother. And it was just, this really like glorious moment. So I think those small moments really contribute to the overall experience. But a short plug for like the academic experience as well. And
we have to have some version of that in here.
and a kudos to Drew as well and the BBSA team. But the ALE conference for me was actually a really inspiring opportunity to get exposed to new ideas and people who are out in the world really leading new concepts, in the Black community. And so for me, that was a really incredible opportunity to just kind of expose myself to something that, if I had continued at my job and lived my life, I probably would have never, ever, ever been inspired to hear those stories or pursue those ideas. And there's so many opportunities like that. There was Climate Cap here. There's, all sorts of conferences, but that really stood out to me, the ALE conference. It was just a remarkable opportunity to learn new things.
Yeah, definitely. And how can I not mention the Colombia trip?
Maybe it's better we don't.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Colombia is the marquee trip that all the MBA ones go to as being part of the cohort. All 210 to 15 MBAs going to Colombia as a big group, having fun throughout the days, staying up till 5 a.m. and then going on activities at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And those were one of the best times I had. I'll also plug in some conferences. I had fun organizing the Energy Week conference, where I got to see the different side of things, trying to reach out to the panelists, getting them together, and also organizing it, which might be really tough. I know that Drew also might have some perspective on it.
Yeah, I am the co-chair of the ALE conference. I helped plan the conference last year, so I'm really happy Alex enjoyed coming last year. Last year was in February, but we actually moved it to November, so it's on November 16th and 17th. I have some really cool speakers lined up. And as much as I enjoy the conference, the process of actually like planning the conference, so working together with your team on logistics, speaker reach out, making sure like all the little things in the conference go well, I think is a skill that I didn't expect to develop at Ross or in business school. But I can say that I've planned a conference, right? And I think also the school really does help. People in our CDO office, we have people just in general at Ross that work here full time that, like their job is to sort of like help me get the conference together. So we can put on a great production for like not only our students, but alumni come back as well as prospective students. So
certainly a wide range of experiences from your MBA 1 year. Many fun, many professional. I'm very interested to hear, with all of this experience from your MBA 1 year, what's the thing that you're really looking forward to as an MBA 2? And if your answer is MBA Council, I won't be offended, but I will think you're a workaholic. We can start with Vraj.
Yeah, actually, I'm a big snowboard guy. I didn't get the chance to go to the spring trip to the Alps last year, but that is something I'm really looking forward to, going to the Alps.
Have you snowboarded before?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Maybe not the place to learn, but that's perfect.
I
love the enthusiasm.
Not learning. I know how to snowboard. I've been doing it for quite a while now, but that is the one trip I've been looking forward to throughout the year.
Oh, man, there's so much to look forward to. I think one of the great things about MBA 2 year is feeling a little more settled. So you can kind of take advantage of more opportunities, I think, in an intentional way. So, for example, you said don't say MBA Council, but like being VP of Wellness, you get to think about, how do I want to shape this community? I think MBA 1 year, it's like everything is overwhelming. You've got to make new friends. You're trying to figure out where you're going to work in the summer. You're trying to get back into school, which can be very challenging depending on how long it's been. And so I think it's fun to think about, okay, how do I want to actually like manage my life a little bit more, because it doesn't feel like things are coming at me from left, right, and forward. So I think if I had to pinpoint one thing that I was looking forward to, I think it's really just spending time with all of the people who I made those relationships with the first year. And, I think the hopes are that in our second year, because we don't have all of these things coming our way, we can actually deepen those relationships, because I think that's, ultimately what business school's about. In 10, 15 years, I'm not going to remember the econ class I took. I'm going to remember you guys, and still hopefully have those relationships and maybe be doing cool businessy things with you guys.
Cool business ventures.
Yeah, let's see.
That's what you learn at business school for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's actually really similar. So, well, first I'll start with, obviously we just have a new MBA 1 class that came in. So I'm really getting to enjoy getting to learn about them. And it's great to see, their enthusiasm. It keeps, my enthusiasm about, just everything. Because
they bring the energy that we need.
Yeah, they bring the energy. And so, I love that. But during at least my MBA 1 experience, a lot of the conversations are pretty, I wouldn't say shallow, but they're very high level. What were you doing before Ross? Where's your internship? Why don't you have an internship? Why?
That was a debilitating question.
Yeah, and honestly, that was just exhausting. And I had an opportunity. Honestly, a lot of, on Columbia was I felt one of the first times that people really got to just relax. And I was like, man, I met some really cool people on that trip. I'm you did some really cool stuff before school, right now, the things that you're looking forward to doing. And so I actually, I'm looking forward to not having those high-level conversations with people, those really in-depth things to really get to know people. Because to Alex's point, a lot of our experience at MBA is not the 2 years that we're here. It's the lifelong relationships that you build. And so I'm really looking forward to deep diving into those.
I'll definitely plus into what Alex and Drew were saying about the connections part of it. I think I'm someone that really doesn't, I don't think anyone really likes small talk. And I think I'm really, really looking forward to just being able to just dive into conversations and say, hey, you told me about that one thing that you were worried about this summer. How did that go? Rather than, how was your internship? Did you like it? Do you want to go back? But I feel like I should say for the record, I did not go to Columbia, but I still feel like I am well integrated into the community and have friends and all of that. So even if you're not able to, for whatever reason, you'll still have a great spring break regardless. I think the other part of what I'm excited about is coming into Ross. I think there were a lot of people that unexpectedly I ended up leaning on very heavily at various parts, whether it academically, when I was recruiting, when I was, just extracurriculars. And if I can help give even an ounce of that back to either my fellow MBA 2s or the incoming class, I think I would have done my job here. I think I keep expressing this over and over, but our community is only as good as us, leaning in on each other. I imagine it kind of like a trellis where we're interconnected, and you really just have to keep leaning on each other. So if I can help lift someone up in all of that, I would feel really, really grateful to have the opportunity to do that. So
you queued this up for me really, really well.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Because the next question was going to be kind of directly to that point, particularly the pay it forward concept that Ross loves so dearly, is that you all wound up on MBA Council, obviously, in your respective positions. The council is an all-volunteer kind of gig, and so presumably there was something a motivation, a personal desire deep inside of you to do what you're going to do and do it to the best of your ability. Would love to hear just kind of what that source of inspiration was for each of you, be it your MBA experience, your pre-MBA experience, whatever it is. And we will ping pong it right back to Diya, since she queued this up nicely for me.
I think I've kind of touched on bits and pieces of this throughout, but I think Ross has just given me so much to my own personal growth, professional growth, and my academic growth. I didn't know half of what I know now when I came in. And my motivation has always been just continuing to create the best experience for our class. I've said this in previous speeches and this and that really everyone's giving up a lot to be here. And every single one of us had a great life, a great career, great family, everything before coming here. So our job as council, and I stress this to our team over and over and over again, is just to make sure that the students that have given up all of this to come here have the best possible time. And I'm not only talking about in class, I'm not talking about in clubs, but I'm talking about their overall 360 and making sure that we're there to support them at every angle.
I love that. For me, so it's pretty actually simple why I actually want to do MBA Council. I actually really care about the school. I wear my Ross gear, I wear my Michigan gear with incredible pride. But the school and the way it is not, it doesn't just exist because it's just this great place and we have the best resources and all that stuff, which is, to a certain extent true. Are you guys Harry Potter fans at all?
Oh my
Yeah,
God, so much
obviously.
so. I can't wait for what you're about to say.
Remember like Prisoner of Azkaban?
This
When,
is
Yes.
a great analogy.
where Harry Potter, he's looking for his dad to do the Expecto Patronus charm, where he's coming, but then he realized that he has to do it because he has to create that environment. And the Expecto Patronus charm is supposed to be one of the happiest memories that you have when executing it. That is essentially what I feel like I try to do at Ross. I want to create an environment that is welcoming for others as it was for me. And I think we all have a responsibility at Ross to sort of contribute to that. And it doesn't have to be in the MBA Council way. It can be in a small way. It can be helping a friend. It can be, helping out in a project. It can be so many different things. And I really care about the school. So like, that's why, in the MBA Council. Or
I should have let you go first.
That is a beautiful analogy, but I hope you know that when we do superlatives at the end of the year, I'm going to say Drew is most likely to create a Patronus charm.
I'd also want to know, who are the Dementors that are haunting you?
Ohio State.
I thought you were going to say recruiters.
All right, you ready for some real talk?
Oh, let's hear it, Alex.
Okay.
I love this.
Okay, so I think my inspiration to do specifically wellness came a little bit before the MBA. So one of the things that inspired me to come back and do my MBA, because I worked for quite a while, was I really suffered from a really bad burnout. And in that, I realized I wasn't probably aligning with my path and I needed more inspiration. So that's really what brought me to Ross. And when I started, even just during orientation, I was very intentional of like, I need to take care of myself. I need to make sure that I'm managing my energy. I need to make sure I'm not overcommitting, because all of those things like will erode my sense of ability to contribute and like lead, right? And so in the process of doing that, I think I set an example to people, because people were encouraging me to run for wellness chair for my section. And I was like, no, that's not really in my plan, that's not, it's a very honorable, it's a great position. It's important, but I don't think that that's really what I see for myself. And I was getting so much encouragement that I was like, maybe I should just try it out. Maybe it can be a way for me to almost hold myself accountable too in the process, that if I have to be intentional and think about this for my section, I'm going to hold myself accountable in the process as well. And so that's really what brought me into this concept of wellness. And I think it's so important, because if you want to be a good leader, you have to think about your wellness, right? If we think about the leaders that we admire or that we would follow into the fire, are they people who are stressed and anxious and not sleeping well? Typically not. They've got their 2 feet on the ground, and they feel secure and like safe when you follow them. So I think part of business school is really learning that concept for yourself and carrying it into your leadership style. And it can almost be the first thing to go when people start getting stressed. But that's why I feel like my role is so important, is how do you help create an environment where people understand and can play with that and learn that for themselves so that they can be the leaders that they want to be? So
I definitely could have used that in my pre-Ross career.
Couldn't we have all?
It was the topic of my VEDX speech.
I know, which was very moving. I mean, I was like, I think being vulnerable about the ways that we're confronted with challenge, is also an important part of leadership, like being able to talk about how are we taking care of ourselves? And part of taking care of ourselves is turning to our community. So I think that's where being part of MBA Council is facilitating that community where people aren't afraid to ask for help and people aren't afraid to lean on one another, Hear,
hear. Yeah, I also have a similar story. I agree with all of your points you've made so far, but I'm a dual degree. So I was here at University of Michigan before I joined Ross. And I decided midway through December, in like 15 days before round 2 applications closed, that I want to be part of Ross and be part of the MBA.
Holy panic.
I know. I could have used some of those stress busters at that point. What I did was just reach out to a couple of MBA ones I was taking courses with, and they formed together as a community. And I received so much warmth and such a warm welcome. Even before I had applied, they've helped me do resumes, essays, even helped me figure out which courses I might be wanting to take. And that really teed off for me because I really got involved. And it was one thing that someone said when I was telling him that I'll take you out for drinks when I get in. But he just said that in 2 words, that you don't need to do that, just pay it forward. And that is enough for me. And I guess that is what we are trying to do here at the MBA Council.
Yeah, I think the pay it forward mentality is really the thing that brings us all into the room for those council meetings.
Am I allowed to ask your why?
Oh, my why of MBA Council? Well, so I came from a military career before Ross, and so everything up until Ross was all kind of, as a military leader, the entire concept of servant leadership, where you do the dirtiest jobs with the lowest level employees that you have, because that's just what leadership looks like, and that's what good leadership looks like. And I think coming into Ross, I said, okay, I'm done with that life. All I'm doing is going to take care of myself. Like, I just need to take care of me for a few years. And unfortunately, because of just like my personality and the way that I am, I just like was naturally like, okay, no, I'm just going to end up taking care of other people because that's what I do. So last year was academics chair, and I was like very obsessive about academics. Drew was in my section and can tell you like,
It's true.
When we went on, when we went on break, I had everybody's butts in seats at the exact 10-minute mark. 8 a.m. econ. No one was prepared for the firestorm of Mark O'Connell. But I think that was kind of like an introduction and kind of like a reminder of like one of the things that makes me me is like servant leadership and trying to enable everybody else to be as good as they possibly can. And so last year when Diya asked me to be EVP, I was like, yeah, okay, let's do this thing. It took, all of 3 seconds.
It took about, he just like blinked and was like, okay, I'm in, whatever you want.
Yeah,
like,
so I think it's for me, it's just an opportunity. And especially because I don't really have like any direct like responsibilities for the communities, Drew, you've got DE&I, Alex, you've got wellness, Vraj, you've got international. For me, it's a really direct opportunity to make your lives as easy as possible and to like elevate you to whatever you can be to make the broader community the best it can be.
You've been doing a great job of that so far. So.
I appreciate it.
Like Mark's the man for the job, because there's been times where I'm like, how does he even have time to write this up, send this out? But yeah, you've been doing a great job.
Appreciate it.
He's everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
Making sure we're just moving forward. And we appreciate
keep the train
you.
rolling, baby.
Yeah. It's rolling. It's rolling.
Which brings me, when we'll come back to this right after the break, but the next thing that we'll be exploring is going to be kind of the trains that are rolling forward and what visions you have for the future for your various communities at Ross. But we'll take a quick break here to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. Through our podcast, you can connect with the people and experiences that define the Ross way. Check out our other podcasts, such as Working for the Weekend, an exploration of the part-time MBA experience, Business and Society, a business podcast with award-winning Michigan Ross faculty, and Down to Business, a new interview series with Ross alum in the C-suite, hosted by Dean Sharon Matusik. All podcasts can be found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Welcome back. So we've got a whole year coming up ahead of us, and I'm curious to hear kind of some of the new initiatives and strategic direction of the council for this year, particularly in light of some of the stuff that happened last year. So Diya, can you get us started with some kind of the broad initiatives that we're pushing this year?
Totally. And I think none of this will come as a surprise to any of you based on, all of what we've been talking about kind of ladders up to this. But if I had to paint broad strokes, the 3 main areas we're focused on is cross-collaboration. So that means not only clubs working with other clubs, but different types of clubs working together, different types of organizations working together, just collaboration between international and domestic students, just in every way you can think about it. The second is DEI and inclusion. As we know, it's an election year. There's just a lot going on in the air, but our job on council is to make sure that we are an inclusive community for everyone, and that means truly everyone. And the last part, as Alex touched on, is that I think a lot of us and our peers maybe lost sight of our own wellness and our own well-being in the rush of recruiting and clubs and being involved. We really want to put that back in the forefront. I don't want to reveal too much, but I will kick it over to my incredible VPs to talk a little bit about each of these.
Yeah, absolutely. So to Diya's point, Ross should be a place where everyone feels welcome. And at least for myself, I went into my business school experience knowing that 40% of my class, at least, would be international. People would be coming from all different parts of the country. And it's very easy to go into your comfort zone with people that think like you, look like you, things of that nature. And those environments are really important. But a part of the growth that you get in during these like short 2 years is being able to like literally have a friend in pretty much every continent in the world except for Antarctica. Like, because you
never know.
maybe
Antarctica. You never know. You never know.
So, like, that's just a great opportunity. And some of the feedback I heard last year from people in our class was that it was like, yeah, like, I just, didn't have an opportunity to meet people, like, from this group or that group. Or I thought they were standoffish, but then I realized after, like, having a project with them that they were actually incredibly nice and kind, insightful. So, for me, I want to, like, build collaboration between, everyone at Ross, but particularly our affinity clubs. I think there's a great opportunity for us to support each other. Now, these affinity clubs are great places because a lot of groups do need their safe space. That is important. But another important aspect is being able to support others and then also welcome others into their culture. So that's somewhere where I'm really focused on. I am the co-chair of the ALE conference, but while I thought it was a great conference, like I could probably count on one hand how many non-people of color there were at the conference, where a lot of the conversation I thought actually could be like as beneficial, if not more beneficial for non-African Americans than African Americans. So with that in mind, I'm trying to allow for better opportunities for people to attend different conferences, get access to different things that different clubs are doing. I mean, there were so many people that came up to me the week after ALE and were like, oh, I just didn't even know what was going on, even though like we had, advertising and things like that. I was like, oh, I just thought that was only for BBSA. And so I think there's like an education piece. I don't think people inherently are like, I just don't want to do anything else that has nothing to, do with like my thing, right? So I just want to create an environment where people can collaborate and learn from each other.
Drew, I think it'd be super helpful since Kara, our VP of clubs, isn't here. If you could just quickly touch on what are affinity clubs versus professional clubs versus all our social clubs and just really touch on where those overlaps are.
Yeah, so I'll start with professional clubs. So you join a club at the beginning of your first year, and it's typically around the career that you like want to pursue for this your summer internship. So I was in investment banking club, there's consulting club, there's marketing club. There's so many different clubs in terms of dedicated to you getting an internship or a full-time job. Then there's your affinity club. So I identify as African American, so I'm part of the Black Business Student Association. There's the Women in Business Club. There's the LABSA, BRABSA, pretty much there's a affinity club. Wherever you sort of identify with, there is probably a club there. And then you don't have to be, for example, if I wanted to join LABSA, for example, and LABSA is great, I have a bunch of friends in LABSA, I could join as an ally and I can still go to their events. I can still participate. So there are opportunities for that. And then in addition to affinity clubs, there's also social clubs. So I'm part of MBSA, like I said. So we have like things like Skeeps and we have winter formal, things of that nature. But like also there's clubs where I'm part of the basketball club, for example, where we play twice a week at the IM.
The pickleball club, my
pickleball club.
Yeah.
The tennis club is new this year.
We also have the soccer
Wolverine
club.
Wine Club.
Wine
my
club.
Other favorite.
Wolverine Wine Club is actually probably my favorite club.
Sneaky everybody's favorite club.
Yeah, it's great.
Two of my good friends run it, though. I'm very biased.
Yeah, so there's so much to do and be involved in at Ross. And obviously it can be a little bit overwhelming. So to that point of balancing that, I think that's a great segue to Alex to talk about wellness.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, I think, we've talked a little bit about the importance of wellness as a leader, and it does need to be integrated into all aspects of how you decide to manage yourself ultimately. And I think Ross as a business school, right, there's the MBA program, but there's any number of programs that fall under Ross. And I think they also put their money where their mouth is. They've hired a director of wellness this year who's really responsible for championing our initiatives at sort of the program level and making sure that that's a consideration, So maybe doors that we can't get into to talk about why this is important, we have someone there advocating for us as well. And so I think this is really a transition year where we really understand, how can we lean on that director of wellness? How can we utilize that relationship to really champion things? And I'm also a big proponent of, build on what we do well. So we do have a wellness week. We're going to take what worked well from last year and build on it, looking to maybe do some volunteering this year, which I think is an important part of wellness.
We walked dogs when I was an undergrad as part of our wellness thing, and it was amazing. Just like a bunch of fluffy German Shepherds in a shelter that need a walk. It was great.
That's so rewarding. Yeah,
Sign me up for that.
Plus, I mean, I'm a huge dog fan. We all know that.
More dog walking.
So we're trying to get creative this year. Funny enough, you'll find this out. Like it's really hard to find space in Ross. And so there's actually no space for Wellness Week this year. And I was like, great, we shouldn't be at Ross anyways. Let's go take Wellness Week on the road and find places outdoors for us to go and carry out some wellness activities. So we're doing that. And then part of this initiative around collaboration is really thinking about how can we have different clubs partner around wellness. So especially, I think, like the professional clubs where they're really seeing firsthand how people are kind of navigating and responding to the recruiting process. They have such a special place where they can actually create some spaces for wellness in that process. And so we've been working both with them, the clubs, but then also the peer coaches who lead your FACT groups your first year. That was part of the training this year was, okay, how can you maybe identify when someone needs some help? How can you approach them? How can you foster a relationship where they feel they can trust you as well? So trying to integrate wellness into all of these different spaces so that it doesn't just feel this thing that happens on top or on the side, but really, people confronting you about it. Hopefully that you don't feel that someone is maybe accusing you, but rather that it's a relationship you're building and you can be vulnerable and it's a safe space. And so looking forward to all things wellness.
The FACT group training is brilliant.
Right?
Everyone in my FACT group had like a moment where they were just like, this is too much right now. And I think the FACT group leaders would have definitely benefited.
What's a FACT group?
Yes.
Come on.
I actually have no idea what
is
FACT
it? Functional Accountability Career Training or something?
I don't know what it stands.
I was today years old.
You guys did way better
That
than I
is
did.
to learn facts.
Yeah, exactly.
You do learn facts about what you're going to need to do to recruit.
But yes, FACT groups are essentially once a week programming where MBA 2s will kind of, with a small cohort of MBA 1s, I know for Consulting Club it was 8, I think, in our FACT group, and it varies depending on career tracks, but they essentially are kind of a bonus on top of the professional clubs to kind of focus and hone your efforts in a smaller environment. Yeah,
and your FACT group leader, I think, is really the primary person who kind of sees you through your journey in the fall. So they're they're in a position where they can really observe. How is this person doing? And yes, we want you to get a job. That's very important. Get an internship. But we all talked about it. That's what we talk about. But we don't want you to do that at the expense of yourself, And I think in a lot of cases, actually taking care of your wellness as your first priority will allow you to show up as a much more well-rounded and happier person in that recruiting process. And that shines through, Again, you don't want someone who's stressed and anxious.
Yeah.
You want someone who...
Got to show up to my interview without bags under my eyes.
Yeah. You need sleep. If you're not sleeping, I always tell people, if you're not sleeping and eating, just start there. Don't do anything else. Just make sure you're getting enough sleep and eating well.
Basics of being a human. And then
yes. Yeah. Learned that one the hard way, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thanks for the segue, Alex. I also am taking the tips on sleep. I've been getting my sleep, but...
Vraj is pointing at his Whoop wristband right now.
Always...
Diya has her Aura ring on. Boy, I really need to get on this. I need to get on this tech thing.
We're trying. It's always yelling at me though.
I know. I was seeing my last week. It's all red.
We need to be better.
Do you hear my voice in the back of your head?
I know. I do.
Sleep. Get some sleep.
It's more about don't be late, don't be late, don't be late. For everyone, I'm a chronic late guy. I was always late to things. I was late to this call.
You were on time for your projection.
Which was 10 minutes
your forecasted You were on time to the forecasted arrival time.
But coming to the international community, it's the biggest community at Ross. We comprise of around 44-45% this year at Ross. It's one of the biggest communities, and one of my biggest initiatives this year from things I observed last year was to bridge the gap between the domestic students and the international community, be it LAPSA, BRAZA, ISPA, the Japanese Business Association. All of them do some really cool things. They have really cool social events such as the sake night, the kimbap making night. But what it misses out is that the involvement from the domestic students and vice versa. Like Drew was mentioning that in the ALE conference, there weren't any representation from the international community. And I feel that is really important to learn and be part of the culture. And that is one of my number one goals this year, is to try and understand how can I bridge that gap maybe even through small dinners, all the way up to having just small coffee events where people can come together. And just on basis of free food, I can get them to talk. And that is one of the initiatives. But aside from that, we'll also be having an international week where every day we'll be highlighting one of the clubs, one of the affinity clubs and their culture. And we'll be doing that 4 or 5 days in November and finishing off with the International X, where 6 or 7 speakers will come from different parts of the world, share their stories, and we'll get to know them better. And I hope to involve a lot of the domestic students and also hear their voice in being part of the community and how international students impact their lifestyle. But yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned International X. Can you talk us through the X series that Ross likes to run?
Yeah, definitely. There are a couple of events, speaker series. My highlight was the VEDX, where I was able to hear the stories about military, me, myself not being part of the armed forces. But I really enjoyed hearing how their experiences shape their leadership styles and also how it has been able to make them better leaders and better people in the community. But also there is a FitX, which is an unspoken event. Not a lot of people know about it, but I'll try and do it justice because it's where people who are really caring about wellness and fitness come together and they talk about how can you improve on your fitness at the same time be a business leader who impacts people within their teams in such ways. And I feel that it was a really great event, especially hearing from one of my friends, Harsh, who has climbed the Mount Everest about his stories.
That's fitness at its peak, I think.
No big deal.
I see what you did there.
And also, I just want to say, I promise I didn't prompt all of our VP responses, but all of their responses touched on 2, if not 3, of our initiatives. So I think that just goes to show that our vision, we're just building towards the same thing, building towards the same 3 pillars. So I hope, sincerely hope that comes across in all of our programming this year, that we're one team, one dream, for sure.
One team, one dream.
Super cheesy,
one dream.
yeah.
Including the alumni. Arpit, if you're listening to this is the shameless plug for your Voices of Ross series from last season. So I think it's an enduring tradition that we plug it every episode from now until the end of time. So keep listening, guys.
Hi, Arpit.
Great. Well, this has been a really, really fun conversation. I think understanding the vision is going to be really helpful, especially for our current students at Ross. I know there's sometimes some conversation of what does council even do? But I think this will be really helpful for current students to kind of understand the vision going forward. And I certainly wish you guys all of the best in your future endeavors. And if it doesn't work out, I will be there to both cast your Patronus charm and be your Dementor in the corner.
Dualities.
Yeah. A little bit of balance everywhere. It's wellness. It's balance.
Thanks for having us also. I don't know about you guys. This is my first time ever being a part of a podcast. This was super, super fun.
Yeah. I got asked on for Voices of Ross last year as part of, coming out of VEDX, and we had a bunch of the kind of X series speakers on, and it was my first time on a podcast as well, and I realized how much fun it can actually be. So this is a blast. And with that, we'll kind of wrap up our episode. Business Beyond Usual is brought to you by the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. Today's episode was produced by myself, Mark O'Connell. The executive producers of BBU, who you'll hear from over the course of this year, are myself, Aishwarya Dhume, and Vashishta. Special thanks to JT Godfrey and Jonah Brockman, who did our editing and recording work today. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Until next time, go blue, and this is Business Beyond Usual.